So, welcome to another episode of Menable Matters with me, Steve Whitten. Now, this movement is really growing because what we're getting more and more of is people reaching out to us and actually saying that they want to be involved and they want to be an ambassador. So I'm absolutely delighted that my guest today, Todd Bailey, is our very newest ambassador and is going to tell us a bit about his story and open up about his vulnerabilities. And I'm sure that when you see, if you're watching this on video or even hear, because you'll hear it in his voice, that Todd visually does not represent in a way that you would think there's anything going on. And so we've deliberately called this podcast, It's Just Not You. So I'm going to let Todd explain what that means in a little bit. But Todd, welcome to Menable Matters. How are you, sir?
I'm very well indeed, Steve. Thank you. Morning. Thank you for having me. Lovely intro.
Oh, was it?
I think so, yeah.
I stumbled over a few bits of that, but we got there in the end. But yeah, so as we've already said, in good old Menable Matters fashion, if you could introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do, and all that, that would be amazing.
Certainly. Yeah, no, certainly. So yeah, Todd, I'm you'd probably tell from my accent, Sheffield northern based, but I'm very lucky to be an account director for Auto Trader. So I'm sure many people remember us being a very, very popular press title once upon a time, and of course now fully digital business with probably about 1,000 plus employees. So amazing employer. I absolutely am one of the lucky ones that loves my job. Mm-hmm. Amazing culture, and I get to deal with in this fabulous industry that is automotive. So I deal with a handful of our very largest customers, and of course our business liaises with customers of all sizes, whether it be home traders or right the way up to your large PLCs. So yeah, a lot of different customers. But no, I'm absolutely delighted to be here, Stephen. Big admirer of what you and the movement do.
Oh, thank you. That's great. Just out of interest, do Auto Trader still print a magazine? I always remember going into news agents and buying them just to see what was available.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember the last issue actually. So no, we don't do any of them at all.
Don't need to anymore.
And if you do have a copy of that final issue, keep hold of it because it might be dare I say it might be worth some money at some point. But yeah, I'm sure many of you.
Probably worth more than some of the cars that were for sale in there, probably.
Unbelievable, yeah. It just feels like such a long time ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. How the world has changed, eh?
Yes, I know, very much so.
So we got talking last week, and I think you were inspired by, obviously, Adam Nichols, who's also an ambassador now, works for JCT 600. Yeah. You know him very well, and you'd listened to his podcast, and then you got in touch with me, and we had a bit of a chat. We had a very good chat, actually, and you were very open and honest. And as I've said, we've called this podcast It's Just Not You. And the reason for that is because even I said to you a little while ago, offline before we started recording, that, you've got a very cheery face. You've got a very positive demeanor about you. And so on the face of it, you wouldn't look at you and think, here's a guy who's troubled and got stuff going on. But that's exactly what you want to talk about, isn't it? Because there are three elements to what's sort of happened or happening for you, and we all feel that this is important for people to open up and share their vulnerabilities. So in your own sort of words or order, then really, give us a potted history of what that means for you.
Yeah, sure. I think I think you're right. I think it's certainly an important message for now, and I'm certainly more open to talk about it with absolutely anybody because I think it's the right thing to do. So I've actually suffered with a fair few things, and I think the latter part of it all, I think I've always suffered with, really. So I'm an only child. Had an amazing upbringing, an incredible relationship with my parents, and was always encouraged to speak openly and try to articulate how I felt, good, bad, and indifferent. And I guess really sort of fast forward to sort of mid-20s, a number of sort of life events occurred for me that sort of really brought home mental health and what it actually meant. And I think you're quite right. The amount of people that would say, how can somebody like you feel like that? Become, if I had £1 for it, as they say, £1 for every time somebody said that, I'd be very, very wealthy. But, I've suffered with PTSD, which obviously post-traumatic stress disorder. that related to a road traffic accident that my father was involved with, that effectively should have taken his life. Really, it's a miracle he's still here and fully recovered. I then had some traumatic instances around the birth of my children, who all had stints in special care baby unit. Again, all okay. My daughter's had open heart surgery in the last year, mid-pandemic, which is just what you need, just mid-global pandemic. But then I guess the more long-term thing that I suffer with the most is depression, and again, that I think tends to be the one that surprises people the most, Steve. That I will see a positive in everything I will attempt to. I will have no issue standing on a stage or in a room full of people and presenting and speaking and being the joker of the pack, or Jack the lad, as my parents would often refer to me as. But I've always had this feeling of depression, if you want to call it that. And, you know, it's I think it's been with me for as long as I can remember, to be fair. But I think it's only in the recent years that I've been aware, or maybe it got to a point where I had to do something about it.
Right.
So I think it's just a story of vulnerability, really, if you want to call it that, and my attempts at recovery, being the loose descriptive of that, I guess, because we're all trying to recover, aren't we? And we're all trying to live with it. But I think my feeling for wanting to talk about it is that nobody thinks somebody like me should feel like this. You know, married, 3 children, great job. But there's still something that is not right. And I think that's a really important topic.
Yeah. And as you say, you know, very easy for you or I and many people like us to be on stage or in front of a room full of people and come across as the jokey, jovial type, and actually no one would ever guess, you know, that something's going on. Yeah. So let's, if you don't mind, let's start with the depression then, because you said that you've had that for as long as you can remember. Can, maybe a daft question, but can you remember what might have triggered that, or when you first sort of became aware of it?
I can't actually, Steve. I was, you know, probably like a lot of people, incredible highs and really, really low lows. That's the right thing to say.
Right, yeah, I understand that.
No, I'd even articulate it, you know, reference things like going on holiday with your friends. I never wanted the weekend to be up. I would go to bed on a Sunday, or I'd spend Sunday afternoon just mortified that the weekend was over, just because I'd had such a great time with my friends. And that's a big point. You know, this last year's been hard for me because I've not been able to be in my usual social environment with people or customers or colleagues. I'd get home from a famous sort of lads holiday or whatever and be just absolutely devastated that it was over and those fun elements of my life were over. And I think, you know, I don't think I knew what it was when I was younger. You know, and I just don't. But as I got older, it's just got worse. And I don't know if that's external factors. I don't know if that's just the stresses of life or getting older. I'm not sure. You know, I don't know what it is, but you know, it's definitely got worse. And I know this is quite an admission, but I know I'm not the easiest to live with. I know I'm not the best version of myself sometimes, and I guess I could say this is like a letter to my family, but I know that I'm not always. I can be. I don't know what it is. It's like this. You can't be the person you want to be, and I can't seem to help that some days. You know, some days I know from the minute I wake up I'm not in the mood and I'm not in that version of myself. And I've said this many times before, actually, that version never surfaces at work, because work makes me happy and it gives me focus and it gives me drive and passion, and that I get to get up every day and be with customers or as on Teams, as we have done, like we are today on Zoom for the last year, and help people and, you know, be seen to help people. And that's a really good coping mechanism for me. And I think there's been a really current of that feeling from all of you people that have been on the podcast, Steve, actually, about this industry that we're all in, because it is amazing. So mine tends to surface in my own space, which of course is absolutely pants, because, you know, you're with your family and your children, and that's not great either. So
yeah.
But you know, I can only just keep trying to get better and coping with it, I guess. But yeah.
Now, before we started recording, you actually said that there might be some points, especially when we talk about the PTSD associated with your dad's accident, that you might have a little bit of a wobble. And can I, and which is fine. And can I just say that actually listening to you talk there, I'm glad you kept talking, because I actually had my own little wobble.
Well,
while you were talking about that, because what you were talking about there really, really resonated. That, and I think this is where we're coming from as well across the industry, that there are so many people, you know, and particularly as the industry requires you to be fairly upfront and fairly, you know, vibrant type of character, especially in like sales and management. But the reality is that the very real person it could be someone else at home, and you know, we're not criticizing the industry at all, but we just think that there are pressures in terms of the way we work that don't make that easy.
I mean, I never surfaced my mental health issues until I worked for Auto Trader. You know, I really, really believe this. You know, I think Auto Trader hasn't for me built character; it's revealed it. And
why do you think that is, Todd? Do you think, I mean, because, you know, we're on a mission about creating psychologically safe environments. I mean, is that what, I mean, you can give the Auto Trader a plug as an employer and how
I think so. I mean, I feel very fortunate that I'm comfortable that however I feel, I'll be, there's that acceptance, you know, and I'll be supported and I'll be cared for. And I think that, you know, culturally, we have to help people. You know, we have to look beyond the certain measurements or KPIs that are in this industry, because, you know, there's somebody behind that result is either battling something that we probably don't even know about. And I sat down with the Wellbeing Guild and explained I'd come to this place and this position in my life where I felt I should be doing more to explain how I felt. And it's okay to feel like that, because, you know, here I am, you know, Todd Bailey, and this is what I do and this is what I'm up to every day. But, you know, I struggle with that as well. And I think I've almost been sort of encouraged. Certainly I've been encouraged by the leadership team, you know, and my direct managers to always be open. And when I spoke to my manager at the time about wanting to write a blog or talk about I was encouraged. You know, I wasn't, oh, do you really want to do that? And you're going to put yourself into the spotlight. I didn't get any of that. I think it's an amazing idea and good for you, and really, really encouraged to be open and upfront with where I struggled. And I just think that, you know, we have to do more. You know, we've got to really commit to helping people work and be employed in these environments where they can tell you their darkest darkest feelings. And I'm fortunate that I can do that. And I guess I'm sure I'll touch on some of those on this episode.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. So, well, I mean, and that's what makes you perfect to, you know, when we talked last week and we talked about you being an ambassador, you know, this is brilliant, because you know, your values are very much aligned with what we're trying to achieve. So, you mentioned there about the Wellbeing Guild. I'm going to come back to that in a bit, but before we do, let's pick up on these other two areas then of your, what you said were your sort of not triage, that's the wrong word. Well, whatever three is. Trio, that's it. Triage. What's it talking about? Anyway, in the order, we'll get there in the end. The trio. And so you mentioned depression, and you said about PTSD, which is linked to your dad's accident. So, I mean, you know, I know this is a touching moment for you, but do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, certainly. So I think my dad's accident was probably the first light. And of course, we, you know, when I was younger, we'd lost family members, and, you know, my grandparents die and things like that. And you go through those, obviously there's awfully sad events, but I think, I don't know what it is, and I'm not sort of downplaying anybody else's relationship with the parents, but, you know, I grew up, you know, it living in my parents' pockets, really. You know, me and my dad just were obsessed with football, so we just went home and away, went to watch absolutely I won't go into my club that I follow, because that would be depressing, but I think it was the first instance where I had visibility of how precious sort of life is, really. And Dad had always been, and still is, always been the protector of us and a provider for us. And then in a heartbeat. It was, you know, he'd had this. He was hit by a trainee fire truck in his van, and it was so touch and go at one point that there was the air ambulance, because they thought they were just they were dealing with a fatality. So I was on the stairs doing something random, as you are at home, and my mum rang, and it was about 7 o'clock at night, to explain that, you know, Dad had been in this accident, and she couldn't tell me how he was. I think he just got into shock, really, all the way to the hospital. And when I walked into the sort of the emergency unit, my mum caught eyes with my wife, and it was a bit like the moment with Lineker and Gaza. When Gaza got booked in Italia 90, it was like one of them, keep an eye on him, because they knew what I was walking into. And I don't remember anything after that. I just remember falling to pieces, really, and anger, and, you know, why would this happen to him? And at that point, they didn't know what was going to happen to him, really. He'd got a fractured skull, punctured lung, amongst lots of other things, and for periods of time they didn't really know if he would ever recover. And we were told, and I'll never forget the moment, on a busy hospital corridor, that we probably ought to be preparing for a life without him, or a life where he wouldn't be the man that we remembered. And it was just crushing for me, absolutely crushing. And you know, there was my dad, who for all my life had protected us, and he was unable to protect himself, and we didn't know what was going to go on. Now, fortunately, you know, he made a full recovery, but it completely pulled the rug from under my feet, and I mean, collapsed, literally collapsed, just fell to pieces. And mum's got me to deal with, literally on the ground, and a husband who is in a, you know, as bad way as he was. And you know, she was just an absolute tower of strength. Just I've never seen anything like it. And you know, just as inspiring as anything. But then you've got all the other bits, you know, informing family members, and being an only child, there was only really me to do that. So I was speaking to family members and saying, you really don't want to see him at the minute, because he's not in a great place, and he's not the person you remember. He was irritable, and of course, with head injuries, you know, you aren't always the same person. And at the time was the hardest thing I ever went through, and as you can tell, is still a hard thing for me to speak about, actually. And it's good for my dad, because he can't remember much of it. But you know, it's one of those things, those character building life events, whatever you want to call it, that I'll never ever forget, really. And I needed lots of help after that. Lots of help.
Yeah. Well, we talked about, you know, how the pandemic has really you know, brought to the surface this fragility of life, and you know, the importance of realizing that, you know, and coming to terms with our mortality and all of that. And I think when you see that in someone else, it's something that you have no influence or control over.
And that's it. I think doing the job that we do, and in this industry, we're very, very good at managing outcomes and managing expectations, and that's what we certainly pride ourselves on. I know I do. And
fixing things.
And you can't wave a magic wand and get out of that situation. And you're just there. It's incredibly hard.
And I have to say, I mean, all of that is really, really moving, and I'm so grateful that you've shared that, and you know, it's an inspiring story. But what makes it even more warm and able to listen to is the fact that all the way through that, you still remain cheerful looking. And I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, what?
Oh yeah.
But you know, I think this is the sort of raw authenticity that you know, we need to get these subjects talked about. And then you went on then a little bit before to talk about anxiety, and I know that you know, tell us a bit more about that, because you've had some challenges with your offspring as well, haven't you?
That
have added to this
just a bit. So yeah, I've got 3 children. So I've got Lucas, who's 7, and then we've got twin girls, Harper and Quinn, and there's about 38 minutes between them both. Harper being the eldest. But yeah, I mean, Lucas at birth, we you know, I've said I definitely don't want any more children, but I definitely don't want any more after the episodes we had with these three. But so Lucas was born healthy and absolutely fine. I went off to get the obvious bunch of flowers and balloon for the newborn baby and everything from the hospital shop, literally 5 minutes away from in the hospital, away from the ward. And by the time I got back, I just paid for the flowers and I got 6 missed calls from my mother-in-law to tell me that Lucas had stopped breathing. So they were having the sort of the skin to skin point where, Lucas is on mum's chest and all that. And then he went blue, just went as blue as you can, like my top, went blue and stopped breathing, and they couldn't resuscitate him. So he was whisked. So before I could even hold him, he'd been whisked off to special care baby unit. And then, you're in episode 2 of these life events that you have no control over. Mm-hmm. And this was my first child, and I didn't get that moment of, here's my son and that holding him or anything. The first time I held him was minutes after I'd experienced him having a lumbar puncture, and it was 12 hours after he was born. It was absolutely horrendous. Mm-hmm. And you never truly get over what goes on with your dad, but then you're experiencing it as a parent yourself, and you're going through it all over again. Here we go again. I can't cope with this. And I couldn't. I was angry at the world and frustrated and bitter about the fact that why am I going, what have I done? Why am I going through this? And it was horrendous. And then thankfully Lucas made a full recovery. He spent 3 weeks in special care. So I'd had 2 weeks of paternity leave, and 2 weeks of it was spent in the hospital. It wasn't even at home with him. And it was horrendous. Yeah, horrendous. And then roll on to nearly 4 years ago, and we had twins, and both of whom were premature, which is quite common with twins. But what we weren't expecting was that Harper would be later diagnosed with trisomy 21, which is Down syndrome, which was a shock, not a negative one by any stretch. I grew up with a girl, Rachel, who is as inspiring as anybody I've ever met, who has Down syndrome and is a fantastic advocate for people with additional needs and showing that actually it's absolutely fine. So I wasn't upset or saw any negatives in it. It was just a shock. And of course, at that stage, it wasn't handled brilliantly. I mean, the first thing that the nurse said to us, or the consultant said to us, was, "I'm sorry to tell you." And I thought she was going to tell us that one of the girls had not made it, and because of them being premature. But she said, "I'm sorry to tell you that we think she's got Down syndrome." And I just said, "Don't be sorry about that. Absolutely do not apologise for that." And it's traumatic anyway. But then we have to go through all the usual checks and health checks that, and obviously certain health conditions that can come with Down syndrome. One of which we were told after 4 or 5 days that she had an AVS canal defect, which is effectively holes of the heart. So, we didn't know at that stage whether she wouldn't require immediate surgery or if it was operable or anything. And thankfully, I say thankfully, but it got to her being just before she was 3 to having the surgery last year, which of course mid-pandemic, I couldn't go and I couldn't see her. I couldn't spend any time with her at all. I was just seeing pictures and images of her just wired up to a machine. It was awful, just awful. And I think I only coped because I'd got my son and my other daughter Quinn with me throughout all of that. I couldn't be with my wife, I couldn't be with Harper, and so I suffer with the worry of most parental worries of having children, right? But the additional worries of can we cope, can we help her, and actually the perception versus the reality of all of those experiences has been far better. The reality has been she's amazing. She's absolutely amazing, Harper, as they all are, to be fair.
I was going to ask you, how are they all doing now? Because
amazing, yeah. I mean, Harper, I call her warrior girl all the time, really, because she subconsciously within the Down syndrome community, they're subconsciously told no, and they're not going to do this, and they're not going to amount to this, and they'll never be that. And she is the absolute rule breaker when it comes to that. She can do anything. And she had surgery, Steve, and was home, was off pain relief within 48 hours. She pulled all the cables out, all the wires out, because she couldn't be bothered with any of that. And she was home within 5 days. You know, she open heart surgery, you know, full on open heart surgery, home in 5 days. She an absolute miracle child, and gives me that strength every day. You know, she's incredible.
Yeah.
But
I'm a big believer. I know, and I'm a big believer, you know, that special children like that are a gift to very special parents. So
well, thank you. Yeah, and I agree. And I think, you know, my wife and my wife more so try desperately to advocate for the positives of living with Down syndrome, because it is a very special community, and you know, she is an absolute joy. And you know, but so yes, they're all thankfully very good now, and certainly keeping me on my toes, that is for sure.
So we've talked about, you know, you've got a very supportive employer, which is great. And, you know, we've talked about the sort of 3 areas that you've experienced. You put these into these categories of your issues. The crux of it for me is, what are your coping mechanisms then? I mean, for anyone listening to this, you know, I mean, it's all very, very moving. And I'm sitting here now thinking, bloody hell, how does this guy cope? And more so, how do you remain smiling like that well, with everything going on? So what are your coping mechanisms then? And I know medication is one of them. You told me about that.
Yeah. I mean, the smiling thing is just been inherently, is just ingrained in me from my parents. It was always smile, keep your chin up, you know, not all that. That was like kids' parties, smile. You know, they used to force me to go and pay the bill in restaurants so that I could have conversations with adults, you know, all those sorts of character things. So the smiling thing sticks, I'm afraid. But the coping things are very. Are
your parents? Is your dad a Yorkshireman?
Yes.
Well, there's another reason why he sent you to pay the bill, and then
that is true. That is true. I never thought about that, actually.
Yeah.
I must remember that when I'm doing the same with Lucas. But no, I think the coping. The truth is, Steve, I don't always cope.
Right.
And I don't. You know, there are days where I think I touched at the beginning. I'm acutely aware I can sometimes be quite difficult. I can be quite abrasive. I can be a bit frustrated, and I truly believe that's because I am a bit of a perfectionist as well. So I expect certain things and a way of disciplines. Yes, I take medication. So again, I take medication for my depression, which I started on probably about 2 years ago, when I would say it got to a place where I absolutely needed to do something. I doubled that medication, that dosage, during the last year. I've really found the restrictions very difficult, and that's not. I don't mean I haven't supported it, because you know, saving lives and keeping keep preventing strain on the NHS is a massive, obviously a massive thing that we've all got to be aware of. And but I have found it very, very hard, like I'm sure many have. I actually find physical exercise as a natural medication that helps me. I read a lot. You know, I read a lot. I listen to podcasts, yours incidentally, but I find the escapism from reading and podcasts more so than anything else is a good way of coping. But I think most importantly, I genuinely advocate for talking as well. I talk to absolutely anybody and everybody about, if they want to, about how I feel. And I put it all out on a blog probably 18 months ago, and I haven't done anything with it for a while because it's kind of known thing now, and people talk to me about it, and that's how I want it to be. I believe I should be, whilst I'm comfortable in doing so, I should be a voice for people who are not as comfortable in talking about it. And I've always been very different to my friends, really. My friends are amazing friends, by the way, but they are men's men. You know, they don't talk about feelings, and I'm not. I am the absolute polar opposite. My best friend, Nick, he is the polar opposite to me, and that's why we work, because we are opposites. But I am the one that is often the most sensitive, and I will cry at the montage of the Euro finals on Sunday. I'll cry at the montage that BBC put on. I've always done that. So I
Toy
find
Story
talking
3 did it for me.
shocking. Oh, Steve, I'm terrible. Anything like that. There's a new one come out we watched with the kids. It had only been on 15 minutes, and I was, wiping the blooming tears away. So I've always been really open with how I felt, but actually hid the depths of it from everybody, really. And I think that's the worst feeling I've ever had, really. That feeling of just hiding it from everyone.
Well, look, I mean, it's not a solution, but, you're part of the Menable family now. And, even though you've only been on board as an ambassador, a week, if that?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Not even that, probably.
Maybe not, actually.
We're already getting a fantastic vibe from having you on board. So, the phone is always on for you to pick up and chat to any of us. And this is the network that we want to grow, and you're a big part of that. So,
thank you.
There is one thing on a bit of a downer note that continue that a little bit, but that we want to talk about, which is this thing that you and I shared when we talked last week, and we talked about the phrase that we both used was, "We can see the appeal."
Yeah.
And it was the appeal of let's not put too fine a point on it, of being on a platform with a fast approaching train. And anyone listening can use their imagination as to what that meant. What was, just remind me of, excuse me, what that meant for you in terms of that thought, really.
Yeah, I don't. I think that was ultimate rock bottom for me, really. I absolutely, I'm pro-life. I love life and I love people. And for me to get to a place where I don't look back and think I would have done that, but I completely understood why people did. And that was the moment for me. And I just knew that enough was enough. And I couldn't, how could I feel like that? It was, they are the bravest. Those that sadly do, in my eyes, are one of the bravest people, because there is no way out. And I felt that the mental pain was just, I just thought it's horrendous. This, I was so unhappy, and knew I had to do something, or I had to raise that flag to someone to say, I don't feel great. And actually, there'll be many people who never knew I got to that stage, but it happens to far too many people, and we have to do something to help people get through that. I'm fortunate. I can safely say that I would never do that. But like we touched on, I was so unhappy and low and just detached from who I was, and I could never understand why, but it was just a state of mind. And I genuinely, like I said, don't believe that that's what I would have done. But I could see why people did it. And I thought, I can completely understand why people get out that way. And I just, my heart just broke, really. That was the turning point for me, trying to manage it better. But I think it's we all hear people have an opinion on those that take that route, and some of it really sticks with me. And can you only imagine the place those people are for that to be the way out? and I just think, we have to help. I was listening to the episode with Adam Nichols, and I just thought it was incredible how he spoke, and absolutely unbelievable how he articulated where he was. And fair play to the guy. It was just an unbelievable story. And difficult.
Well, thank you, Todd, and I can see how moving that is for you. So, as always, it's always a delicate one for me, because I want us to talk about it, but I don't want to open up any deep issues.
I think it's right we do. No, I think it's right that we do.
Yeah, thank you. Well, because I think what it emphasizes is that, and this is back to the, it's just not you point, really, is that people would be surprised at that, because, we have a habit, don't we, of painting this mask on us and carrying ourselves in a way that seems to work for every day, but deep down inside there's this stuff going on. And you know, it's only, as you said, and my experience was the same, stood on a platform with when the announcer says the next train's not stopping here, stand well back. And you think, I can see how that would sort this out in an instant. It wouldn't be so great for the 100 people standing on the platform or the driver of the train, you know, so that's what stopped me from, or sort of made me kind of jolt back into reality, if you like. But
and I think that's it. I think it's that I felt like I'd been punctured, because all of a sudden all I could think of was, oh my God, what am I thinking? You know, how did that enter my head? And you know, you're right. And I just think it was, I don't know how I'd got there. And I think that was a scary part for me. I've always felt in touch with where I was, but I'd slipped, you know, I'd absolutely slipped. And, you know, how could I, on paper, how could I have felt like that? You know, somebody, like you said, I will smile at everything. Even if someone's giving me bad news, I'll try and smile. And when, you know, the finding the positive is, I will always do that. My dad is an absolute pessimist, and me and mum laugh about that. I will find a positive. Yeah, but we can always do that. Yeah, but what about this? We'll do this. It's fine. We'll get over it. And there I was, you know, completely understanding why it was a thing.
And that's the bit where, you know, why we came up with the title for this podcast. It's just not you, because when you explain that to people, and as you said, you've been the life and soul, the jokey one at the front of the room. People go, really? Never expected that.
Can't believe it. Can't believe it. And I think, you know, thankfully I've never felt like that again since, never. And I think, if anything, I don't know about you, Steve, but I felt like it was almost like a leveler, really. And I thought, I need to look after myself, and I need to make sure that I'm doing something about it. And I'm not just sort of sat here in 3 months' time, having not spoke to anybody or had some, you know, CBT, you know, which I think is important. But
Well, Todd, you are a top bloke. We, as I said, already get a fantastic vibe from having you in the family of ambassadors as we grow this, and, you know that our values and vision are aligned in terms of what we want to try and achieve. If anyone, you know, well, I'm sure there will be loads of people who your story will have resonated with. Is there a way that people can get in touch with you, or, you know, connect with you on LinkedIn or anything like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Connect on LinkedIn. I speak to absolutely anybody. I've always said that. We'll always mandate that. I'll hopefully try and be available for anybody that needs that. And I think we all should do that. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You know, anonymously. You can reach out if you want, or if you prefer to talk. I'm more than happy to speak to absolutely anybody that might feel that my story or coping mechanisms might help, or even if it's just saying I felt like that as well. You know, whatever anybody needs, we have to, you know, this industry is great at having a sense of spirit, and I think we've seen that resilience in this last year, asking retailers to work how they have done, and businesses, and I think we do have that spirit as an industry, and I think that's why we all love it. So I'm absolutely here for anybody that needs it.
Excellent, thank you. Well, look, there's no doubt there'll be people in our industry that will make a view or an opinion or a comment about this, but I, for one, am sending you massive virtual hugs.
Thank you very much. I can feel it. Thank you. I'm right back at you as well.
Excellent, mate. Thank you. Well, you are genuinely a top bloke. You know, love to the family, and we look forward to working with you and sharing more insights and stuff, you know, through Menable over the coming months and years. So
absolutely,
top man. Well done.
Thank you for having me.
You're a top man. Thanks,
Cheers,
Todd.
Thank you.